So the oil pan is done. I haven't put the oil in it yet because, like I said before, I need to work on this fan right here. So pretty simple, straightforward job. Got to loosen everything up, starting with that lock nut and then the adjusting nuts right here. There's two of them for the AC. You do the same for the power steering and the alternator down there. You know, there's one that locks it in, and then there's one that helps it, you know, for the swivel. Get them both and it should be a pretty simple, straightforward job. This is loose right now, this fan shroud, just because of having to lift the motor before. The first time I did it, the fan poked through. So speaking of fan, when you replace the water pump, they also recommend that you replace your fan clutch because they say both of them wear together. This is a set I got from Rock Auto. I think this was about $15 or $18, can't remember exactly. Here's my new water pump. I think that was $18, and it was like $3 for the new thermostat. So these are all the pieces that I need at a minimum to do this job right. I might end up needing to do a coolant hose or something like that. About 2 years ago, I replaced the radiator with this little plastic core jobby. The old metal core jobby was starting to leak. But other than that, it's a simple, straightforward job. I started just loosening everything up. Wanted to make sure I wasn't going to have any embarrassing moments on the video. And I'll just go ahead and get this done. And once I get a little bit more broke down, I'll show you what it looks like. So I got pretty good access now. I'm about to tap it off. Just wanted to point out, you know, it's just like, again, one of the basic rules I've always forgotten, but keep going back to, is always listen to your father. You know, he says, you know, watch the bolts as they come out, and make sure you put them in the right order and stuff like that. So they start to look alike, but then I got one bolt that's smaller than the other. So you got to remember where it came from. Just happens to be this one bolt right here. There's only 3 bolts that hold this thing together. Oh, that as also when I took off my belts, I laid them out in the same sequence that they came out. You know, 1, 2, and 3. So when I put them back, it's going to be 3, 2, and 1. That being said, I'm ready to make some noise. I didn't do the hoses yet because they're stuck behind this bracket right here, but once I get this off, I should have ready access to the hose. Come on. Really didn't want to come off, does it? So at this point, let's go ahead and make a... No, I don't have all the bolts off. I'm an idiot. There's 4. Okay, so I got it all clean, opened up, cleaned off, stuff like that. Got a good job. I did a good job cleaning the surface right here. Did I get it? Take the brush to it. Same with the thermostat. I wasn't having any cooling issues, but it's one of those things, you know, you start getting so far into a project, let's take care of the stuff that wears down over time that we don't think of. Up to and including cleaning out the gooseneck itself. So whenever they put this motor in, they just basically painted the whole thing. You can tell what I've touched so far. I've touched the oil pan, it's a different color blue. I've touched the valve cover because I got in there and adjusted the valves. Had a minor leak. And you can see it's been a while since I've been in here. Some of the rust is starting to form back up because you know, you get stuff off, you clean it up. I had significant amount of corrosion and stuff, and these bolts were painted before, so take them to the bench grinder, clean them up. Here's my new thermostat. My only issue that I'm facing right now is I don't have a gasket for this. Didn't come with a gasket. And I don't like just putting silicone on there. It's like this down right here. I wasn't leaking at all from the water pump before, and all it was that was on there was the paper gasket. So they work well if you do the job well. Here's the old paper gasket that came off from the thermostat. Not reusing that, obviously. So I gotta see if I can get one, or maybe cut out some paper myself, which I don't think I'll be able to really do very well, or just go with the silicone. Here's the water pumps. Here's the new and the old. That's what I'm used to seeing, is one of those styles. The one that was on here had a different type of setup, the way it was drawing water. So I'm going to get a lot more volume pushed through with this style versus this. It's got just smaller impellers. And I also had significant amounts of corrosion And I replaced the radiator about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago actually, so I had relatively fresh coolant in there. I don't know if you can see it here. It doesn't really move as much on this small area, but I still definitely have shaft play, so I'm glad I did this job. It needed to be done. So we'll start getting it put back together. Here's my new water pump gasket. I've got a nice fresh clean surface. Everything's out of the way. Let's get it back together. So quick update. I couldn't find any RTV blue, and you don't want to use black or something else on it, but I did find my gasket paper. It's an old roll. So I made a pretty well sized gasket. Fits pretty well, just using a razor knife. The only issue I have here is, you know, I guess it could have been a little bit cleaner. I had to use a step bit to get these nice little holes, but I think they'll crush just fine when it comes to the installation. So now I got a good gasket for my gooseneck and my thermostat. Put my thermostat in, my gasket paper over it, and I should be good to go. So I've talked about using gasket sealer before, and this is it right here. It's very sticky stuff, let me put it to you that way. Rather than use RTV black or something else, this is also what I used on the oil pan. It's just this very sticky stuff. What it'll do is it'll help keep my gasket in place as I mount this to the block. I'm sorry, I can't. It's chewing bubble gum and walking at the same time. As far as anything that gets stuck out there a little bit, like it's bled over, I'm not too worried about that. This is it's soluble. Water will wear it down. It's not going to hurt anything, and it'll go away eventually without damaging anything. It'll just get worn off. So it's starting to tack up immediately. It's already very touchy. Let me go ahead and get my gasket put on and get this mounted. So the old water pump has studs in it for the fan. The new one does not. That's how it came, looking like that. So rather than put a set of vice grips on here and really dick everything up, what you can do is put down one of the fan bolts. Not the best threads to start with. Put down another one of those fan bolts. Let me get this first one backed up a little bit more. These threads are a little junked up already. Then you put the second one on, and then don't undo that one. Use this bolt to actually back out the entire thing. Look at that, easy as pie. It's going to take a little time on the wire wheel to get everything nice and clean looking again. But that'll be the next step right there. Now I can just work on these nuts, getting them off, and go on to the next two. Rather than put the vice grips on here, you got threads all jacked up. You'll never get everything back together right. So, well, got a new problem. It's this part. Let me see if I can get a good angle on it. Right there. There's a bolt that goes right through the water pump behind this pulley. So I got the pulleys on, I switched over, I got the new fan clutch on, but here's what happens. You hear it grinding. I think it's that right there. So what I need to do is take it all the way apart, see what's going on. You know, it sucks. I was 2 minutes away from having a completely done project. I mean, at this point, I've got everything locked in here. All I had to do was adjust the belts and do the fluids. That would have been good. Go figure. At the very last bit of the project, I got an issue. It is what it is. What are you going to do? So I'd send Rock Auto a nasty gram maybe. So I'll measure the parts, see if there's any difference. I do have the water pump torqued where it's supposed to be, which is 15 foot-pounds. But maybe I can just turn that bolt head a little bit. So once I take it apart, I can see where the scraping is, what's going on. We'll go from there. I just have to take the fan back off, take the pulleys back off, get the belt out of the way, and see what's going on. So what I determined, what I found out, is that the distance between the mounting surface, or not the mounting surface, but the back side of the water pump and the pulley was different on the new pump than the old. It looks pretty close right here, but it's not. And where it was rubbing, sorry, was right here, just right on the body of the water pump. Now, I mean, I guess I could grind it down. I definitely could return it and try another water pump, but I don't want to wait. So I took the back side of the pulley where it was rubbing, and I started grinding down this edge on the bench grinder. And you see I'm not really cutting into it. All I'm getting rid of is that rolled edge. And millimeter down or something like that. And I actually had success. I mean, I'm going to work on it a little bit more to get rid of any burrs and stuff like that, but come on. There you go. I'm not rubbing anymore. And even when I tighten it down, I'm going to check it and make sure, but I'm definitely not rubbing, and that's the important part. So this was a simple enough fix, manufacturer issue. They changed this spacing right here. It's a little bit further out, and not only just that, but also the body itself. The body comes out further, and that's where my issue is this spot right here. They changed the design, and who knew an old 1980 Chevy actually had tight tolerances. But so I'm going to keep working this a little bit more. You can still see I have some of the edge still left here, and I'll work on that, get it down a little bit further, just so I have plenty of tolerance or plenty of clearance. I didn't want to, I mean, I could have put some washers back here that would have pushed the pulley out further. I didn't want to do that because when I first installed it, I mean, these belts lined up perfectly. All my accessory belt, my air conditioning, all the belts lined up perfectly. So I didn't want to change the offset of this even fractionally. That would have been plan B. Plan A worked. I'm just going to grind this down a little bit more and give me a good chance to clean it up, and I didn't clean it last time, so I'll clean it this time and I'll reinstall it. All right, problem solved. It's really hard to see with this camera right here. See if I can get it in there a little bit better. There, now I got plenty of clearance between the two. After I ground it, I made sure to, check all the edges, make sure there was no burrs or anything else like that. And I don't want this to rust, so even though I cleaned it up, I cleaned this part up, I might be a little bit screwed on that. It's probably going to rust a little bit. That powder coating came off. But I'm going to take this back off and paint it. It was pretty gummed up, gunked up, and a little ugly to begin with. I don't want to paint the insides, not at all, so I'm going to run a piece of tape around it and just paint the top. That'll help protect it from the rust. After the paint dries in this gloomy, humid day, can't really tell, but it's gray out. It's going to probably take, I don't know, 6 days for it paint to dry, but we'll get it back together. Alright, so it's up and running. No leaks. So humid out right now. I think I see moisture down there, but on the oil pan I'm not sure. Hopefully not. That'll be some of it. That's my temperature center. I gotta put that back on. So you can see how the belts are nice and lined up perfectly, which is why I didn't want to put the spacers on. Oh, looks good though. The sound never comes out right, on these, but damn, that sounds good. Not bad for a straight 6. Here's one of the little modifications I did. I put I pulled the clock out, which was not working, and I put a tack in there. You can still see the hole where the push goes through to reset the clock. Alright, well, I'm going to continue to burp out the coolant. Make sure I got my radiator nice and full, it gets up to temp, and we'll call this project done, hopefully. What the hell, why not a test drive? So, coolant's good. It's staying nice and low. I don't know, it's what, 60 degrees out today? And it opened up, the thermostat opened up nicely. Oil pressure's nice. I'm stuck at a stop sign here. Give me some gas. It's usually a little bit higher, but I mean, I just did change the weight of my oil too. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure how a lot of that stuff works out. But timing is perfect because it's starting to rain.